Yeah, no, I think that's great. Make it fit your lifestyle is your point. And that's why I always look to you and say, how have you managed sport and being actively engaged around your lifestyle? Because that's certainly my goals. And I've shared with you that I want to be 70 years old and then my kids tell me, Dad, let's go do a half Ironman or do whatever. I still have the ability, call it the passion and interest in doing it, versus getting burned out a little bit too early by again, maybe prioritizing the wrong things. And so
yeah, you know, I always like to tell the athletes that I coach, you know, the training should be something that kind of, you know, it pushes your comfort zone a little bit. You test yourself periodically in your training to go to that next level and then that next level. But at the same time, it shouldn't be so much of a stretch that it burns you out, or you get injured, or you get sick all the time. And so there's this real mantra of consistency that for me is the absolute key to not only fitness, but everything you do in life, right? If you're consistent over a period of time, you will get better. You will become more proficient. You will become fitter, stronger. You'll gain more experience as an athlete. And so have that consistency concept just in the back of your mind when you're thinking, should I run today, or should I cut the run short, or should I not run at all? You know, consistency. Maybe someday you have it on your schedule, your coach or whatever plan you're following says, I need to run 40 minutes. And you can just tell it's not happening today. That's okay. Take the day off, take care of that other part of your life that's calling you. And then the following day, then you're more free to actually train. To go back to your question though, you had a great question, like how does nutrition fit into this, and kind of what is that concept of fat burning, and how does that work for us? Let's go back to ancient times and look at our ancient genetics, because you know we all see the big differences in each other. You know, some people are tall, some people are shorter, some are heavier, stronger. You know, there's all these physical differences, but if you look at our DNA, we're about 99.5% all the same.
Yeah.
So all of the physiology that's going on in our body is the same. So if you look inside a human body, we have enough fat. You have two sources of fuel for exercise: fat and carbohydrate. Fat takes it's kind of like diesel fuel. It's slow burning. It takes a lot of oxygen to break down the fat to release the energy for exercise. Carbohydrate is the second source of fuel that's stored in our bodies. It's stored as in a form called glycogen. That breaks down really quickly, and it doesn't need as much oxygen to break down. So if we're just walking along, you're pretty much going to be burning fat because your energy needs are low. You can get oxygen in quick enough so that you can utilize the stored fat, and you're good to go. If you start walking faster, energy needs go up. If you start running, even more. If you start running fast, then you finally reach a point where your body can't get the oxygen in quick enough to break down the fat for fuel. So then it switches to carbohydrate burning. Yep. And then you go into that anaerobic state. Back in ancient times, well, let's look at in everybody's body, you have enough fat stored to go about 500 miles. I don't know how many kilometers that is. It's a lot of kilometers, right? A long way. But you only have enough carbohydrate stored in your body to go about 40 kilometers, 20 miles or so. So human beings are actually designed to utilize fat more than carbohydrate. Human beings are the best endurance athletes on the planet. We're better endurance athletes than even horses. And they're the other athlete animal that can just run and run and run and run. Human beings are actually better than horses at that. So in our training, we want to try to sort of stimulate those two stored systems in our body in the same ratio that we have them. So you want to do a lot of your training aerobically, fat burning. And the more you do that, the more you stimulate your body to develop the enzymes to break down fat for fuel. Right. And as you do that, then you start to go faster and faster and faster at the same heart rate, at the same intensity levels. And that's a really good thing. It makes you just becoming more efficient. And so that's why we don't want to do speed work all the time, because we can only change that a little bit. We can only utilize that a little bit in the body.
Yeah.
And then you can support that also by how you eat. If you eat a ton of carbohydrates, a lot of sugary foods, you're going to shift your metabolism into carbohydrate burning more. And so maybe you do these really good aerobic training days. You train aerobically, you're keeping your intensity levels moderate, and then you go home and you have, excuse me, a ton of candy and a bunch of Cokes and all sugar. You're shifting your body out of fat burning into carbohydrate burning, and so you've countered the benefit of all that good training that you've done. So not that you have to be neurotic about it, but it's good to just really try to keep your diet balanced. So when you're looking at your plate, ask yourself, is there a good source of protein? We need protein to rebuild the muscle that we break down when we train. That's how we get stronger. Is there a good source of good oils?
That's right.
Here at home, I have olive oil, I have avocado, nuts. Is there a good source of carbohydrate? Meaning carbohydrates that are more natural, like beans, legumes, not carrot cake and whatever sweet thing that you love. So, and it's okay to have a little bit of that, but the bulk of your diet should just be kind of a good mix of healthy stuff. And then you're going to feel better, your body's going to recover quicker, your experience is going to be better.
No, I think I've been in the sport for over 25 years now, and I never appreciate the importance on the nutrition side. And it was just, again, the quick fuel. And it's only in the last 2 years that I've shifted as much as I have. And, now I realize I can go in 4 or 5 hour bike rides at a lower intensity and have nothing but water and feel just fine. Whereas before, again, the intensity does matter. So it gets down to what is the target of the workout and what you're trying to achieve and what is the right fuel for that workout. But frankly, becoming more comfortable knowing that I can go on these long things, knowing that the fat is there, and then over time having the metabolic flexibility to shift back and forth between these fuel sources. I think it's incredible. There's obviously different camps on this, but it certainly has worked for me. Clearly, it sounds like it's worked really well for you. And I think it's a lot about being aware that there are again, different energy sources and different energy systems and how it's used, and just to think about the construct of metabolic flexibility based on how you're doing it, and especially for longer endurance events, super important if you're going from up to half Ironman and then, frankly, going to the full Ironman. I'm sure a lot of very, very fit athletes mess up the nutrition part, and then their day, frankly, it's over, or their performance is not what they wanted, even though they thought they were extremely fit going into a race.
Yeah, that metabolic flexibility it's a new concept that everybody's talking about, and part of it came out of a study that was done with a group of African runners, because they're sort of trying to figure out. In general, a lot of the African runners, best runners in the world, some of the best runners in the world, obviously they're very lean, they're very fit, they have endurance, they're able to sustain high intensity levels for marathons and like that. But they're trying to figure out, they also noticed that they, in general, eat almost twice as many carbohydrates as an American runner. And so they're thinking, how can they eat so many carbohydrates but still be so efficient at fat burning? And so they really honed in on how they did their training and when they ate and what they ate. And so they'd have dinner at night, and then they go to bed, and then they'd wake up in the morning, and they'd do a run before they had breakfast, and it was always just an easy aerobic run. So in essence, they'd already fasted for about at least 12 hours, between their dinner and when they start this workout. So they're already in a state where they're shifting their metabolism to fat burning. They go do the workout. The workout is a fat burning workout. So they're supercharging their body's opportunity to develop the fat burning system. And then they would come home and have breakfast, and it was a good mix of stuff. And then later in the day, in the afternoon, that's when they would do a second run. And a lot of times that was a higher intensity run. And they would also have carbohydrates afterwards to replenish, like in their meal at dinner time. And so they were working all ends of that metabolic flexibility, the aerobic fat burning in the morning before breakfast, and then the higher intensity anaerobic carbohydrate burning, sustaining it and replenishing it with carbohydrates after the workout. And so they just had this magic mix of everything they needed to be a great athletes. And so it's really just fun to see, and it's just how they do it.
Yeah,
but it also happens to be like the way to do it, kind of thing.
Excellent. I only have 2 or 3 questions left at Mark. The next one, clearly we're racing in the heat. In Phu Quoc, Da Nang is another 70.3 we host, which is probably a little bit hotter. At least this is year end and a little bit cooler. But we've obviously seen athletes that are able to perform in super hot weather. I was just blown away last year when I was in Kona, and then more recently in Nice. Despite the hot weather, you see these guys still just killing it at the pointy end, and then you've got everybody else. So sometimes you think it's natural, but clearly one can acclimate. What's your thoughts around training for athletes that are racing in warmer tropical weather, and how does one, maybe through active and passive training, develop the capabilities and the confidence to be able to race in the heat? And then what do you do when you're racing in the heat on race day, right?
Well, it's easy if you live in a hot climate. Obviously, you have the opportunity to adapt, to get used to what it feels like when you're exercising in hot, humid climates. If you live in a cooler climate, but you're going to be racing somewhere hot, that's where the real challenge comes. And so, for me, when I was, as an example, when I was getting ready for the Ironman in Hawaii, hot and humid, not quite as hot as I think what we'll get in Vietnam, but much hotter and definitely more humid than where I was training in Boulder, Colorado, especially because this would be fall time and it's starting to get cool there. And so what I would do is always put on one extra layer of clothing that I would need. I would put on one layer more than I would need for the weather that I was training in. So if it was kind of a cool day, and normally I'd wear a long sleeve something, I'd put 2 of them on, so that that microclimate next to my skin was still hot and humid, even though the external temperature was not. And then if you have the opportunity to get to the hot race place 7 to 10 days in advance, and you exercise each of those days, your blood goes through these adaptations and changes in about 7 days. That the proteins change and the viscosity changes, that are adaptations to heat. And after that 7 days or so, then you've adapted as much as you're going to. So if you have the chance to get to a hot place in a hot race, if you're not used to it, a week in advance, you're going to be fine. And then the second thing is, in the heat, you just have to go slower. You just have to back your intensity down a little bit and really keep an eye on your heart rate, because perceived effort in the heat will be lower than your heart rate is indicating, because in the heat, your body's trying to throw off all this heat. So what happens is a lot of the blood that you're hoping will be in the working muscle is actually going to your skin. So it's not delivering the same oxygen as quickly as it normally would in a cooler place. It's not delivering the nutrients, the energy into the muscle like it would normally. So your heart rate goes up to try to compensate, to try to get what blood is going into the muscle there quicker. And so essentially you just have to kind of back your effort down a little bit. And so, when you actually get in the race, if you don't have experience racing in a hot climate, I mean, this tip actually goes for any kind of a race, but especially in a hot place. On the bike and the run, really build into your pace. So when you come out of the water and you get on the bike and you start riding, and the sort of reaction normally is like, I'm out of the water, and you get on the bike and everybody's there and you can see the world and people are cheering, and you go so hard like the first 5K, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, too much. And so that first 5K of the bike, just build into into your pace, the first 5K, 10K, build up to a pace, an effort, a heart rate, a watts that you feel you can sustain. And once you get there, then hold that. And if you've misjudged a little bit and it's a little too hard, it's real easy to just kind of drop back down a tiny bit and then get it under control. If you just blast out of there, which is kind of the way that it happens a lot of times, and you're going way too hard in that first part, all of a sudden you go, whoa, 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 this is way too hard, and your heart rate's way high. You have to back your effort down a huge amount to get your heart rate to actually drop, especially in a hot climate, especially when it's hot. And it can take a long time before you actually get things back under control. So it's much, much better to just slowly build up to what you think is your race pace, and then see how that feels. And the same thing on the run. You know, you get off the bike and you're like, okay, now we got the run, here we go. And people are cheering, and, you know, you feel like, okay, I've only got this one last thing to do. And it's so easy to go the first 2 or 3K a little bit too fast. Again, build into it. You know, you on the bike, your range of motion is restricted, right? Because your pedal stroke is only like this. When you get on the run, if you go really hard quickly, your muscles haven't had a chance to loosen and lengthen out. Yeah. And so, you know, everything can actually get tighter. So when you get off of the bike, even if you feel really good, just slowly build your stride length and your pace until you, again, let things loosen up naturally. Your legs will loosen up, your lower back will loosen up. You'll start to feel like a smooth rhythm coming in, and your stride length will slowly open up to what actually is the right stride length for you, instead of forcing it by going too fast in the beginning. And again, build that effort, build the heart rate up, build that perceived effort up to a pace, a speed that you feel like, okay, this is what I can sustain. And again, if you hit it right, that's perfect. And if it's a little bit too high, you just back it off a little bit. But if you blast and the heart rate goes way like this, like I said, you're going to have to slow way, way, way down to bring it back into a range that's controllable and sustainable, and especially in a hot climate like you're going to have here.